Does anybody find out? Anybody want to share anything that they found useful about doing that exercise, thinking about their discipline in that longitudinal way? Does anybody want to comment on that?
We'll try to design our curriculum.
Yes, yes. So it helps you think about what the important key ideas were, key transformative ideas in the discipline, and that can inform the curriculum. Anybody else got anything that they found useful about doing that exercise?
Yeah, I'd like to try it on my own students, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. Doing this exercise with students, particularly in the first year, they've said, oh right, I want to do a degree in English literature, and yeah, let them use their phones, let them use their whatever they've got on them. Say, well, where do you think English literature started? Where do you think, it's going? And just getting them to little group exercise, to get them to think about their discipline when they first start. Why am I studying this? And they might, at the end of the week, think, oh God, I'm doing the wrong degree, and disappear. But, it's a really lovely exercise to do with students. Anybody else get anything out of that? Yeah?
We have a history of design lecture.
Uh-huh.
And there are lots of books, history of design.
Yes.
And at the end of the books, always there is a big chart like this.
Yes.
Beginning from Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
coming to nowadays, showing all the firms and the important people like this.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can add the other disciplines, for example, what happened in those. This is also a multidisciplinary.
Yes, yes.
What happened, for example, is there a war there, or what happened in music, and in the world, what happened, what is affected that timeline is also important.
I think that's really interesting, and I think it was it you that was doing the communication? So you talk about the sort of the technology kind of drive going forward, but also then the sort of the social media, the political influences, and all the rest of it. So when you're just thinking about your own timeline, there's a lot of other things coming along beside. So you can think here about the kind of the religious connotations around when Darwin started to propose these ideas, and then here you might think about when they started to kind of basically industrialise gene sequencing, and they were trying to sequence the human genome and things like that, and American companies were trying to patent all the genes. So you've got things about who actually owns the sequence, So some people were putting this in public domain, some people were saying, right, no, so we're going to patent this and get intellectual property about it. So you've got that kind of business ideas coming in as well. So yeah, I think it's really important to kind of.
In the class, sometimes they play the music of that period.
Yes.
But it is not the same topic, for example.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And that makes the students.
Immerse themselves. Yeah. That's lovely.
In my field, this can be a good exercise with the sophomore or senior students,
yes.
Because they might have no idea about the historical development of English literature, but with the third-year students or sophomore students, for example, if I teach modern English drama, then I just want them maybe to make a timeline of the historical development of dramas.
And I think it's really important then, as was mentioned by a couple of you, just to capture what their ideas are, what do they know already, in terms of taking that forward. Okay, so if we think then, as we said, relating this back to our curriculum, and these questions are not necessarily always relevant, but along those timelines you can identify perhaps theories and theories that have changed. So if you want to talk to students about errors and moving things on by challenging and questioning, you can start thinking about the elements in their timelines that there was a theory that then changed, or there was a new invention that changed our thinking, or there was a new style. So you can sort of think about these ideas, and this can be really important in terms of helping students question knowledge, question the validity of knowledge, and going back to the ideas that we had yesterday about knowledge is not a static thing. Every theory, every idea is only valid until it's falsified, until the next theory comes along, or the next idea, or the next kind of movement. So it's that kind of getting that idea of like there's not a fixed set of knowledge, and once I know that, we're moving on. So you can think about these types of questions. And again, we've already talked about this. Do discuss these kind of timelines, these types of events with your students. And what I kind of want to extract out of this, from those timelines, you can start to identify these ideas of threshold concepts in your disciplines. So I just want to explore, before we go for coffee, just a little bit about what we mean by threshold concepts. Okay, so within any discipline, with any kind of topic, subject you think that you're trying to teach, some concepts are quite difficult to understand. But once you understand these kind of concepts or theories, you lead to a much deeper understanding of the topic. Okay, so within any discipline, so for example, in computing, do we have any computers here? There's an idea called object-oriented computing. Once you understand that, you understand a lot more about how to design computer programs. Okay, there's probably fundamental elements about well, in the biosciences, you've got the central dogma of how DNA is translated into proteins. Once you understand that, you kind of you understand a lot more about biology. Okay, so with any discipline, there are kind of key, quite difficult concepts, but once you understand them, you understand a lot more about the discipline. So that's this idea of there are thresholds. You cross the threshold on your journey to becoming a scientist or an engineer or what have you. And they lead to this kind of transformation. So I remember really struggling with calculus and learning calculus. And then when I got it, it was like, oh my God, and it was like the easiest thing ever. And you can't go back to not understanding calculus. Do you know what I mean? Once you understand calculus, you understand calculus. You can't go back to not knowing it. It's almost like once you learn to read, you can always read. You can't unlearn that. It's like one of these fundamental concepts. So it opens up a new, previously inaccessible way of thinking. So once you understand chemical structures, for example, once you understand how chemical structures work, you can't not understand that again once you've learnt that idea. And these things are known as threshold concepts, and they're called threshold concepts because it's the idea of, you know, once you've crossed that threshold, you're into a new world, a new kind of era of understanding. So this is just sort of some definitions about threshold concepts. They're transformative. Okay, so once you actually start on that journey, you become a biologist, you become a molecular biologist because you understand this concept. I've already said this one, they're irreversible. They usually can't be unlearned. Once you understand that fundamental concept, you can't go backwards. And they're integrative, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit as well, so they kind of help you bring different ideas together from different disciplines. And they can be bounded. So it's a specific topic. So the ones I've mentioned, like calculus, is a specific topic. Once you've understood that, it opens up the door to other things. And they can be troublesome. Sometimes, they can be quite complex, quite difficult for everybody to understand. So what are the threshold concepts in your discipline? So there's just some different examples from different types of disciplines. So entropy in chemistry, quantum mechanics perhaps, social sciences I'm not very familiar with, but apparently otherness is one of those things. You know, does somebody want to explain what otherness is? That kind of idea that people are other to what you are and understanding that. Maths and engineering. So in any different discipline there's going to be a specific threshold concept. And you're going to be much more familiar with what these ideas are for your own discipline. And why it's so important is because you kind of need to think about your curriculum design and make sure that these threshold concepts are kind of like the sort of stepping stones to take your students through the degree program. Okay, so I'll let you just read through those, but the important thing is that if it's an important concept, once you've understood or once you've decided what they are or identified them in your degree program, you need to focus all of your energy around those. Allow students to spend time developing that understanding of that concept. Not just like, well, I've covered that this week, I've covered calculus this week, I'm moving on next week to something else. Students need to spend a bit of time in that space where they develop their understanding. So that's this idea of developing a holding environment. So spending a bit of time going through, doing lots of different problems in that area, attacking it from different ways, using different teaching approaches to address it. So last time I was here we talked about gamifying stuff and using gamification. If you're going to create a game, I would suggest that you create a game around a threshold concept, because then students actually spend a lot of time thinking about it when they're in the game, and they can start to develop their understanding. And this last one, there's no simple passage from I don't understand this to I do understand it. You kind of move into that space, spend a bit of time developing that understanding before you move on. Okay. Does this kind of concept resonate with you guys? Does that make sense? Does anybody want to suggest, either from their timeline or just from their own thinking, what a threshold concept might be in their discipline? Mm-hmm.
In our discipline, in dentistry, the students should know math, biology, microbiology, and this is threshold concepts, right?
So there's some certain threshold concepts within those disciplines, but it's a bit more granular than that. So there might be specific things in biology that they have to understand to become a dentist. So they'd have to understand about microbiology and infection and what causes infection. That could be a threshold concept. But you can't just say it's the whole of microbiology. It has to be much more specific. Yeah, so much more kind of, there might be some kind of specific area of microbiology that they have to understand about how disease is caused or how they cause infections, to move you on to the next level. And then after that you would understand things about aseptic techniques and sterility and all the rest of it, once you understand that basic concept. Yeah? Okay, yeah?
There may be a lot of threshold concepts in molecular genetics, right? But maybe one of the concepts should be from the communication between the molecules.
Okay, yeah.
The interactions, the affinity, this type of stuff should be a threshold concept that molecule.
Yeah, so how molecules can interact and communicate with each other. Yeah, that'd be one. Yeah.
In marketing, customer orientation is a threshold concept.
Okay, yeah.
The fact that the whole marketing plan should be designed around customer needs
Yes.
is
That's at
the
the heart of everything
evolution
you
of
do.
marketing is quite a recent concept actually.
Yeah.
Even though today it informs all of our efforts.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
This is very interesting. I like it actually. Post-colonial theory is one of the threshold concepts in literature. And here, the third one, develop a holding environment for the toleration of confusion. In this quotation, actually, it talks about Homi Bhabha's liminal space. So I could just use this paragraph as an example of post-colonial or as a definition of post-colonial theory, because the example will be exactly what they will experience.
Yes, yes.
So I like that.
Okay.
I like the definition here.
Lovely, thank you. Anybody else want to offer up? Engineers at the back, anything from your disciplines?
For example, computer engineering, computer science, data structures is one of the threshold concepts.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. Thank you. Anybody else? Who else have we got in the room?
In terms of economics, in terms of my domain, I can say, for example, I can give an example of scales, economies of scale or game theory.
Yeah. And once you understand that, you understand the whole kind of marketing and what have you. And there was one in the middle there, yeah?
I'm teaching fashion design, and for me, it's understanding different market levels is a threshold concept, because if they don't understand this means they are designing for anything.
Yes.
It doesn't fit in the area, so they just don't understand and they design.
Yeah, that's great. Lovely. So, and you can see that the huge diversity of ideas coming across. Anything from you guys down here? Do we have any examples?
I think for the computations, the effects of mass media on different lenses, for example.
Yeah. That's been a real threshold as well from that. So all the different disciplines all have their own threshold concept, and it's worth you spending a lot of time looking at your curriculum and thinking, well, what are the key concepts that students need to understand, and designing your teaching around those, rather than trying to pack the curriculum with all of this knowledge and content which actually they can get elsewhere, and find, as it says at the top there, the jewels, the real jewels in your curriculum that you really need to focus your time and energy on. Because once students understand those, they're then in a place where they can learn the other stuff for themselves. Okay? Okay, right. Oh, that means it's coffee break time. So, again, just bringing this back to your fellowship application, these are the types of things, you know, that if you've got examples of how you're delivering these, they can form a good cornerstone of your reflective writing. Anybody got any questions about threshold concepts before we break for coffee? Sorry. No, you're okay. Anybody got any questions about threshold concepts before we break for coffee? Now, I've mentioned the coffee word, you're all like, oh. Okay, right, so we've run a little bit over, so we can have 15 minutes. If you can be back by 25 to, that'd be great. Okay? Well, I had some blue tack, but I've run out. So unless you can steal a little bit off of the bottom of there. Everybody ready? Right, okay. So just going back to where we started the day. So we've explored threshold concepts and how they should kind of really drive your thinking when you're designing the knowledge base for your curriculum. Okay. What we're going to move on to now is this sort of thinking about research teaching connections and how they can be used to develop those kind of intellectual skills, that kind of graduateness that we want our students to acquire. Did everybody think of a graduate attribute, by the way? Your homework for last night. Okay, we're going to be gathering those up after lunch, so I haven't forgotten about them. Okay, so you've got time to think about one, yeah. So in terms of what we're going to be doing between now and lunch, we're going to think about what's research and some kind of different conceptions of research. And what do we think about it, what do our students think about it, and then how we can integrate research into our teaching practice, and why we would want to do that. Why do we want to put research into the curriculum? So that's the kind of plan for the next hour, so we've got quite a bit to get through. I'll just give you a moment to read through this quote from Brew, which is about 10 years old now, but I still think it's really important.